past 7 o'clock, so I'm just going to quickly start my remarks. So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this. I can't remember if we're extraordinary or not, or regular. We're regular. There's a change. A regular meeting of the Overview and Corporate Community and Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Before we start, there are a few housekeeping matters that I need to run through. First of all, please make sure that any mobile devices such as Alexas, Google Boxes, etc., as mine now looks at me, are turned off so that we're not interrupted in the meeting. If you are speaking or being asked to speak, if you are not speaking or being asked to speak, can you please mute your microphones? If you don't mute your mic, it will be muted for you. And to assist people with viewing, could you please turn off the cameras and only turn them on when speaking to save on the bandwidth and the concentration of the matter at hand. So I'm going to go down the list. So I do apologise for everyone who I mispronounce a name. It's been a very, very long day for me. So I can see we have had Councillor Abdul Loynes join us. I can see Avirius Janius. I'm so sorry. I know I've butchered that. So please do correct me on that. Andy Glencross and Hunter Officer Callum Wareham, Officer Councillor Clive Jones, Councillor Graham Howe, Officer Neil Carr, Officer Oliver Whittle, Councillor Oliver Whittle, Councillor Paul Fishwick, Councillor Pauline Jorgensen, and Councillor Shirley Boynt. Is there anyone I've missed off there, Callum?
Not that I can see.
Yeah, and also, please note, I believe we're being broadcast live again. Is that correct, Callum?
That is correct.
Okay. So, with the chairman's remarks over, we can move on to the actual meat of the meeting. So, apologies for absence. The only one we've had is for Keith Baker. And you mentioned there was no others, correct, Callum?
Yep, just Keith Baker, Chair.
Yep. And minutes of the previous meeting, I do need to actually come into the office and sign them at some point. So I'm going to just if anyone has got any comments on the last two meetings, can you raise your hand now? Otherwise, okay, Clive, I can see your hand up, and Shirley.
Shall I go first?
You're on mute, Clive, so Shirley, go first.
Okay, yeah, it was just on page 7 and 8. There were a list of items that would be provided, information about MRAC and details of the virtual KIC sessions. And I just wondered, had they been sent out? I looked through and I couldn't see them anywhere.
I couldn't see them anywhere either, actually, and that was one thing I wanted to raise.
I'll just jump in here quickly, Chair. Not yet. I've sent the resolution from that meeting to the officers, and they're working through the list. But I'll send a chaser out for that.
Thank you. Anything else, Shirley?
No, that's all. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Clive?
Same question for me, that was.
Oh,
So
there's a change.
that's very handy. But on page 14, there are some more things that we were supposed to be getting updates on. Item number 3, number 4, number 7, probably a few others. Does the same apply to those, Callum? We're waiting for updates.
Exactly. Again, yeah, I've sent them off to the officers, so I'll send a chaser for that item as well.
Okay.
Okay. And then on page 16, item number 2, is there any update for any support for town and parish councils? And item number 3, number 5 and number 7.
Didn't you just say that, Clive?
No. Did I? No.
So okay.
Unless I... Oh, wait, you said 30. Never mind. I got the numbers wrong.
Different page.
Again, I'll send Nigel an email for that one. I'm sure the answers are ready.
All right.
I'd hope so from that, because I know it's been August and it's the holiday period, but it has been is it about 6 weeks? No, about 5 weeks since we were there. Sort of expected at least a note to have come back, even if it's like, well, these are being worked on, please wait.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Does anyone else have anything on the 2 minutes at hand, or are we willing to accept them as read?
Acceptable, read.
Okay, I'll take that as a proposer.
Yeah.
Did someone second that, please?
Yes.
Okay. And if anyone is against, please speak up now. Okay, I think I've given everyone enough time to go off mute, so that is them as read. Callum, I'll come in and I'll pop in maybe a week Friday to come and sign them, so I'll drop you a note on that at some point.
Okay.
So item 22, declarations of interest. Now, on this, I'd just like to declare, personally, I'd like to declare effectively a pecuniary interest in item number 26, in that I work for a company that basically provides online meeting solutions. However, I'm not employed by that particular division and don't work in public sector. So I think I can participate in the meeting, but it's just a note to say that I do work for a company that does provide solutions, but not in that particular division. Is that okay, Callum?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything at all? Okay. Public question time?
None submitted, chat.
Okay. A member question time?
And none submitted, chat.
Okay, so we're going on to item number 25, the Wokingham Highway Maintenance Update. Pauline, I believe this is you and your team taking this, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, I will defer to Andy and the officers, though, to take you through it, because it's quite technical.
Okay, Andy, over to you.
Hi, Chair. Thank you very much. Many of you will know me as Andy Glencross. I'm the Assistant Director for Highways and Transport, and I'm joined this evening, and Ivoris will tell me if I get this wrong, Chair, by Ivoris Jasiunas.
Yes, Yunus. Yeah, that's correct.
Oh, there. Well, thank you, Ivoris. And he is the the service lead for asset management. And we're going to just, in addition to the report we've written for you tonight, we're going to just quickly run through about a 10-minute presentation, just to take you through the process and to introduce you to sort of the technical side of highway asset management. So, Ivoris, if you want to share your screen and put the PowerPoint up and the first slides up.
Yeah, sure.
We need to go back a couple.
Yeah. So 1 second.
That one will do. Oh.
Yeah. Sorry, Andy.
It's all right. No, it's okay. Excellent. Right. So I think in the report, I've sort of laid out some of the process for asset management, but I thought it might be helpful for everyone to actually understand what the Wokingham Highway Network asset entails and its value. So just to give you a few highlights from this presentation sheet, and we will provide this to you afterwards, so don't have to take notes. There are over 700 kilometres of roads, including 8 kilometres of motorway. We have nearly 30,000 road gullies that need emptying. We have 250 structures, over 150 bridges, that is, 16,000 street columns. And when you think about traffic lights, we've got 40 junctions and 61 pedestrian crossings in the borough. And the value of that asset is calculated on the basis of if we had to replace it at £1.13 billion. There is a calculation in there you'll see for the value of the land, but that is a bit moot in terms of, we've got the land already, so we haven't actually paid that. But certainly in terms of having to replace that asset, if we ever had to, it would be extremely expensive. And it's probably, our most valuable asset that the council owns. In terms of how we maintain that, I think you'll see, I'll take you through the basic. It's split down into sort of three main areas. So we have sort of the pothole type maintenance, which you all probably aware of. We've got our new HIMS online reporting system. And if you report a pothole, one of our inspectors goes out, checks it, and if it's deemed to be a safety defect, it gets fixed. And we also have inspectors going out independently and finding safety defects, and those get fixed. And that's the sort of what we call reactive maintenance. So we're reacting to a problem as it occurs. In the winter, we do winter maintenance, as many of you are aware, and it's basically that we, have a team on standby in the winter, and we do a forward look at the weather forecast, and if it's forecast to be very low temperatures with a chance of ice, then we send our gritters out. And that's all part of that winter maintenance. But I think what we're here to talk to you about a bit more tonight is what's called our planned maintenance work. And we call that our structural maintenance programme. And every year we undertake a range of structural maintenance on a range of different roads across the borough. Now, the value of that this year, just for your information, is we spent nearly, just over £6 million maintaining roads in the borough this year. And I think what you're actually interested in tonight is how we select which roads get maintained each year. And that is why I have brought along Ivoris, who is our asset manager expert, to take you through this sort of short presentation on exactly that process. So Ivoris, do you want to take us away?
Still on mute, Ivoris.
Sorry. Thank you, Andy. Good evening, all. So I'm just gonna talk you through how the process works and what we do and how we arrived at the selection of the schemes and programs to be delivered under capital budgets. So that's, if you have a look, it's kind of how the process works. Obviously, it's much more detailed than here, but initially we start and do network condition surveys. Obviously, as a result of network condition surveys, we get a data flow of various readings and various observations, and that it's being fed into UK payment management system. UK payment management system, in a way, it's like approved software. Currently, we have 5 approved software in the UK being used, and the one we are using is provided by WDM. And every year those companies, they need to go through accreditation process. As a result of the calculations run in UKPMS, we get a provisional scheme list, and that's what we call provisional program. Obviously, provisional program, we get from UKPMS the provisional cost for every scheme, because the program knows what's only being submitted, and then obviously we align it to available budgets. The next step, it's verification on site and design, and obviously when we arrive at final structural maintenance program and list of schemes. So a little bit more about network condition survey. So usually the condition surveys are undertaken annually, and obviously they are undertaken by accredited organizations. Inspectors who undertake those surveys, they are accredited as per certain requirements, and it's like these requirements are defined by UKPMS Volume 2, Chapter 2, Inspector Accreditation. Inspectors undertake so-called CVIs inspections, and they are carried out on unclassified Wokingham network. When we do FNS, and that's footway network surveys, Another survey, it's like Scanner, and Scanner goes on A, B, and C roads, and as well all Scanner vehicles, they have like accreditation, and they have like all the calibration certificates as required by, obviously, by specification for Scanner service for local roads. And then on top of that, we do scrim surveys, and scrim surveys we do on A roads, motorway, and B roads. Obviously, usually what we do like CVI and FNS for 100% of network survey, but again, depending on the results, depending on the data, the percentage can be dropped, obviously. But I prefer to do it and cover the full network, because I believe it gives a better result and better picture of the current condition of the network. So that's the various types of vehicles. So that's, for example, like Scanner vehicle, these on that vehicle as well, just different type of scanner. And that's how, if you like screen resistance of the road. The CIs are undertaken from a slow-moving vehicle, and those two operators, one is driver, one is inspector. Here, that's how we got network condition surveys data, and it's like raw CVI data. So sometimes, we tend to get request, or can we have a look at the data? And even for me, to be fair, that data, it's just like you see various numbers, various reading, and obviously that's why it has to go through a software, and it has to go through various calculations. Sorry. Yeah, so another example of how the scanner data looks. And scanner data arrives in so-called HMDIF files from a contractor, and that's how that data looks before any calculations are run. UKPMS, or UK Payment Management System, it's a national standard. It is accredited by the Road Condition Management Group on behalf of UK Roads Board. As mentioned before, we are using one of the UKPMS accredited providers, and the full name of that system, if anyone is interested, is like WPMS, and that software helps to assist us in planning maintenance through systematic collection and analysis of condition data. And we keep repeating every year same exercises, so that's, it becomes systematic, and obviously it gives us good analysis of the data. So guys, I just noticed, if hopefully I won't get cut off, my VPN just message popped up that I might get disconnected. I've been online for, I don't know, for 10, 12 hours, so I might, if I drop, I just try to reconnect fairly soon. Hopefully it won't happen. And UKPMS is like recognized by code of practice for highway maintenance. And obviously, one of well-managed highway infrastructure's recommendation, it forms basis for like DFT funding. And again, it has UKPMS has a certain rules that gets applied to condition data and the calculation of condition index. Because usually, what we do, I'll show you later the list of schemes. You will see various type of data, and sorry, can you hear me still, or I got disconnected?
Yeah, you're still here.
Sorry, just quickly. Can I have a like 10 seconds? I need to grab my phone. I'll try to reconnect. Sorry, guys.
I can hear you fine.
Sorry about that, Chair. It's I just had the same message come up and I had to reconnect.
I can actually give a slightly professional opinion on that. It basically with VPN software, generally the setup after 12 hours is that it will automatically disconnect you. But
You
it
guys
should,
must be working too hard.
Yes.
yeah. And generally what happens when it does is it will give you a bit of interference for a minute, but it should automatically fail over to your standard internet connection. Are you back with us, Severus?
He should be.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
back. I just tried. Yeah, but yeah, the message pops out like connect, but it seems like I'm still online. So hopefully I won't disappear. And if I
Should be
do,
okay
sorry.
now.
So if you look, that's example how UKPMS, if you like the desktop looks, and it obviously it creates like scheme IDs. It gives you a road class, road name, location, obviously various readings, rankings, and the data type. It's again an example of scanner data visualization. It's part of UKPMS, and that's how it's, if you like, the data gets plotted on top of WBC. And that's, for example, visualization, and again, like example how we see it, and when what we see when data it's calculated. So that's obviously in KPMS. What we do like manual download to our spreadsheets, and that's kind of typical format we've been using for the last 2 years. So it gives you
Iris,
like scheme IDs, classes as well.
you might want to turn your camera off. I think your voice is struggling.
Okay, so
Pauline took what I was going to say.
okay. Is it better now?
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah,
Thanks.
that sounds better.
Yeah, so obviously initially what we have is like asset team data, and we got estimated cost, scheme length, how wide the road is. Obviously it's like, road might be, how wide it is might be starting from 3-4 meters and going up and down, but obviously again we have certain rules, and that's how the averages are calculated. Areas and condition index. So I'd say probably that's the most important things, because usually what we do, we look at condition indexes, and we always aim to start the schemes that comes with the highest condition indexes, and that's how we start assigning the schemes to available budgets. Just a quick one, I think it's again quite important. The UKPMS makes a suggestion what kind of materials or maintenance type should be used. So what we're doing, we're using 3 types of maintenance types. That's major maintenance, surface treatment, and for surface treatments we are using micro asphalt and surface dressing. All these materials are HAPAS approved, and HAPAS stands for Highways Authority Product Approval Scheme. So they've been tested and approved to be used by any local authority, Highways England, on their network. So basically, and again, it depends on layers, or sometimes it might be as simple as overlay, but it's not very common. And I went on micro asphalt. Micro asphalt, it's much cheaper, more or less in same price as surface dressing, but obviously it gets applied at various locations. For example, the micro asphalt, it's good as a material to be used. Surface dressing may not, and vice versa. And again, like micro asphalt, usually it comes in length in two coats over the existing surface, and usually what it does, it seals, it protects. But if you have any undulations, you might do a little bit of regulating, but still those undulations would stay. They won't go away. As in case of, for example, major maintenance. Surface dressing, again, obviously before any treatment, micro surface dressing is undertaken. It's if needed, the pre-patching would be carried out. So to repair any potholes, any visible depressions, or any potential visible failure points. So when we get the provisional program, what we do, we take it's like design team and design engineer. He goes on site, he looks at site conditions, what materials and what treatment type potentially is good. Obviously, he checks and extends if needed, or shortens site limits. And what we do, the design engineer designs and looks, he does so-called like coring program. And basically coring program, it means he would mark various points on site pointing to the contractor way to take samples, so-called cores, and that's on the right hand side. You can see after core was taken out, that's how it looks. Obviously it gets filled back, and as a result we get core. And core shows the if you like composition of the road, and obviously design team get a report from coring company telling what layers are sound and can stand, what layers need to be removed as a result of major maintenance. But again, coring, we will do coring only for major maintenance schemes, because for surface treatment, surface dressing or micro, we don't really plane off anything, just it goes on top. If you look like that's how the newly built road would look these days. Obviously, because some roads in Wokingham, and same like in any other local authority, county council, they quite old, so they may not be the same if you like structure like this one is showing here. But usually if you go at the top, so that's where we drive on like surface course. Underneath you get binder course, another layer, base course, road base, subgrade. So basically, when the design team gets the report of course taken, that report would tell them that, look, for example, surface course, binder course, and thicknesses might be failing or failed, or road base may not even exist, like I said, depending when the road was constructed. So again, it's for design team to take into consideration when they designing that scheme, and thicknesses and what material should be used as well. So after site visits by the design, after looking at cores and checking the data provided by corings, schemes are designed and drawings prepared. Obviously schemes costs are revised and estimated, because usually UKPMS costs may vary from the designer's cost. Obviously designers, they would have more information design wise, cost wise, because usually typical construction 100 millimeters, but again, depending on course results, might be 50 or might be 150. So hence the design team updates highway assets with a revised cost. And again, we start from the schemes of hired condition index. We would match the scheme cost, the total scheme cost against available yearly budgets. And that's very, very helpful when we tend to get from from finance team, like, you know, minimum 3 years budget. So it helps us to plan and use our time much more effectively, because like now I know for next year I got around like 5 million or maybe a bit more, and we planning already for next year, and we got, I think, for a year after the budgets and hopefully no changes. So it makes the, if you like, the processes and flows between all the teams quite good. Obviously a contractor, he needs to book resources as well, so they if he can give as much as possible in advance time for contractor to book resources is quite good. And again, one of the things that sometimes, you know, what happens if a design team or delivery team, they check with streetworks road space availability. So sometimes, hence, if you got utility work or developer work or something else, you know, we may not get a road space, and it means that even, you know, some schemes have quite high condition indexes. We don't have no choice, but, you know, we need to postpone it. Obviously, it's not ideal, and we always look and have a chat with streetworks, you know, especially if its conditioning is quite high, you know, that just trying our best to get that scheme delivered, you know, when it's supposed to deliver, but unfortunately, you know, it's not always possible. And after all these exercises, we get a program to be delivered, and it gets sent to the contractor for a delivery and planning on site. That's it from me. Any questions?
Right, if people have got any questions, please use the hand feature to put the hand up now. Or turn your camera on and put your hand up if it doesn't work. Okay, I'm going to go with the first person to put their hand up, Paul.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you, Avaris and Andy, for your presentation. It's answered a few of my questions, but I've got a few more. On page 20, find and fix any safety defects, and to assess and fix any safety defects reported by the public. Up to a certain size, as larger defects are passed back to WBC for ordering. My question is, what is the limit on that size?
So initially what we had, it was up to 1 square meter. And when we agreed that we want to trial, and we created additional bands, now Walker Highways, they can do up to 5 square meters. But again, it's on trial basis, because, you know, we want to keep in control what's being ordered, so they kind of be using our funds wisely, and we targeting areas that are in need the most.
Okay. Thank you for that. On page 20 as well, surface dressing and micro asphalt treatments. What's not spelt out in the report is where the 2 treatments are recommended for use. Could you explain that, please?
So as a rule of thumb, usually surface dressing, it's for rural roads, and micro asphalt usually it's for like, you know, residential areas. So that's kind of I would say the best distinction to be used. But obviously, you know, for example, like if you got, like, you know, like spine roads, sometimes spine roads might be good for micro, sometimes for surface dressing, but that's a designer's call, because he would know how the material would perform. And when they do a site walks and checks, they bring a subcontractor. So subcontractor, he knows, look, yeah, my material can be used here and it will last, because obviously the subcontractor, he has to provide a warranty. Or if he say, no, we can't really use our material here. So that's you know, ideally it goes like, you know, side by side basis. but usually rural roads, surface dressing, more populated areas, micros, because you can't, you know, if you got like cul-de-sacs or something, you can't really apply surface dressing. It's just basically against the technique of all the application of that material.
Okay, thank you. Page 21, it mentions the winter maintenance plan, and looking in the winter maintenance plan, it states in paragraph 2.3, the plan is reviewed annually in order to address any issues raised as a result of operational problems, changing in the network methods, working methods, changes in best practice guidance, new legislation, etc. And the review includes examination of the following and comments from parish and town councils. So my question is, I don't think WBC actually asked town and parish councils on an annual basis for feedback. Do you think that would be useful in the next review for 2020-21 winter?
Yeah, I think, you know, we more welcome to have a look, and because currently what we're doing, the winter maintenance plan review is, if you like, it's almost complete. Just we are awaiting few confirmation, like if we need to include certain areas for gritting. But yeah, it's you know, we more than happy to have a look at any suggestions or questions. And but obviously it should be. I would like everyone to be mindful what usually we're aiming to complete the review by 1st of September. And then obviously it goes to executive member for highways, you know, and be informing that's our process and protocol for winter maintenance for the coming winter. So yeah, that's cool. Yeah, no objections to that.
What I'm saying is here that it states that you take feedback from town and parish councils, but you don't appear to go out to town and parish councils to get any feedback. So that's what I'm asking. Could that be done now, please?
I'm quite happy to do that, but we do get a lot of feedback for town and parish councils anyway. They're not slow in coming forward generally.
Okay, it's just you don't go out to them. That's the point I'm making.
No, that's fine. I agree.
Okay, again on the winter maintenance plan under 2.11, the council does not promote the use of bicycles during periods of prolonged hazardous conditions, with the exception of shared carriageway cycleway routes on primary and secondary salting routes. Shared footway cycleways and remote cycleway networks are not salted when hoarfrost, ice or prolonged hazardous conditions are forecast. So my question is, with the active travel agenda and more walking and cycling being promoted, will Wokingham Borough Council be reviewing this policy to add these routes on a priority basis?
I think that decision needs to be taken, you know, by someone more senior than me. You know, if
over to Andy then.
Thought you might be saying that, Paul. I think that if you've got a proposal, I think that's a change of policy. I'm not sure that's necessarily the subject of tonight's discussion. If you want to put that proposal to us, we will give it some consideration and come back to you, because it's not an easy answer.
I will do that, Andy. Thank you. Page 21 then. Network condition surveys using the machine surveys. You said it's annually. When is it actually undertaken annually, and who owns the equipment?
So usually the season starts from 1st of April, and it can be carried out with surveys anytime until October, like 1st of October, unless obviously if there are obvious issues, or like for example now, like COVID-19, I haven't received any update from Bracknell, because Bracknell is like our consortium. They're managing on behalf of Berkshire authorities, and they are liaising with the subcontractor. So all equipment, it's subcontractor. We don't own anything. We just buy the service.
Okay, so it's shared with Bracknell.
Binns, there's Berkshire, us,
yeah.
and Reading, I believe, as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. I've got a couple more. That's okay, Chair. Page 21, it's more of a comment, really, because you've used acronyms in there. but you actually spelt it out in your presentation about CVI being course visual inspection and DVI being detailed visual inspection. But without the presentation, members of the public might not have known what CVI and DVI were. People come from different backgrounds, so they can mean different things. Page 22 states, whereas plain and inlay schemes are less sensitive and can be carried out at any time of the year, my comment is, when I worked in highways and transport industry, November to February was an amber warning period not to be laying hot rolled asphalt and other asphalts. So I was a bit surprised by that statement. Just have your thoughts on that, comments?
So it's like for inlays or major resurfacing, it has to be two pleasant rising, and obviously, you know, like a subcontractor or whoever, like delivering the schemes they would now, and obviously they would need to take into consideration when providing a works program. So, you know, sometimes you do get very mild, you know, periods of time. Even in Surrey, we used to do, you know, schemes in December and January, subject to temperature.
Okay, it's just a bit of a dodgy period of time in the winter months.
Yeah, because that's not usually, you know, all the surface treatment we aim to do subject to the contractor's availability. If you like May, June, July, ideally surface dressing and micros, because you have more time to bed in and better temperatures and no rain and you know, things and better conditions. But inlays, say if it's two Celsius and rising, you can do it. Obviously, it's not advisable to do it when you get a gritting and salt being you know, put on the roads. And again, it's always ways around it.
And to be honest, Paul, I'd prefer to let the officers use their common sense and the weather forecasts and take a judgment rather than hard and fast saying you shouldn't do it in these months, because I've seen snow in June as well.
What I'm saying, Pauline, is it's the statement that's written there, and I was surprised by it because, you know, I spent 43 years in highways and transport, and it was always an amber warning in November through to February. Just really be careful, where the statement says, you know, you can carry it out any time of the year. It's just adding that bit that is a particularly careful period. And yes, there can be mild periods and they're dry and everything else, and it works well. It's just the statement says at any time of the year. But I'd prefer to have seen it with, however, there needs to be caution during November to February. That's what I'm suggesting.
Okay, I see what you mean.
Yeah. Final one on page 22. Once the works have been completed, the contractor is tied to a defects period. It doesn't actually say what the defects period is. How long is that for?
So for surface dressing, it's 2 years. And that's what contract says. And for
sorry, 2 years surface dressing.
Surface dressing, yeah, that's what contract says. And micro and inlays. Andy, maybe you can advise on that.
The current arrangement with the contractor is that we have a 1 year warranty period on the micro asphalts and inlay schemes.
And 2 years on surface dressing?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And you tend to do if there is defects in surface dressing, you'll treat it the following season.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And plain and inlay, guys, just for completeness.
So plain and inlay, usually, you know, all snags usually, because it's when contractor comes, even, you know, the program we did April, May, June, so contractor around. So if operationally it's possible, the contractor would try to rectify it at that time. Obviously, it waits until, obviously it's you know, it's nothing that is unsafe. It's not being left, but you know, snags, like mainly snags, what is classed as a snag, obviously, it waits until the next arrival of contractor.
That's the key thing, Paul, is that surface dressing and micro asphalt are delivered mainly by subcontractors of our contractor, and they are large national companies who have very busy programs in the summer, and it is difficult to get them back in at times when you can redo stuff of those weather dependent ones. As Iris says, the plain and inlays, there's more local resource to do it and less weather dependencies. Despite what you said earlier, there's less weather dependency on when we can do it.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, certainly does to me. Thank you. Thanks very much. That's the end of my questions.
Thank you, Paul. I'm going to Abdul next, and I can see you, Graham, as well. You'll be after Shirley.
Thank you, Chairman. I think Paul has echoed a few of the things which I need to ask. However, I'm just wondering, given 16,000 street, how many scanner vehicles do we have in the Wokingham Borough?
We don't have any scanners. We buy the service. We just give the length and locations, saying these are the parts of our networks we want you to scan, or we want to be scanned. So I wouldn't know, if you're using 1 or 2 or 3, because all to be fair, all I'm interested in get the data from the scanner.
Right. My second question is the UKPMS software, what you're using. Does this cover the whole of Wokingham Borough? And if you do, what sort of percentage you're covering?
So basically, UKPMS, we feed all the condition surveys into UKPMS, and currently we're covering for 100% for unclassified, and obviously we do A, B, and C roads. So we covering full Wokingham network, and obviously then on top we get the data for footways, and that comes under FNS survey.
Sorry, what's FNS stand for?
Footway network survey, and that's another survey just for footways.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. I'll probably come back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Shirley?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. On the bottom of page 20, you talked about this micro asphalt treatment, and you actually say it looks very rough in the initial months after laying, and I'd certainly agree with that. And we've had residents complaining and saying, what on earth have they done to the road? Couple of questions. One is, it's obviously much cheaper than doing the plain and inlay treatment. How long do you expect the micro asphalt to last in a normal, just in a residential street? That's question number one. But question number two is this idea that you're relying on the traffic to roll out the final surface. I can't quite get my head around that, because traffic doesn't use the 100% of the road surface. It uses the middle of each side of the road, and so it occurs to me that you would never get a very even finish on that surface. So those are my two questions on micro asphalt. Thank you.
So for micro asphalt, it's like usually we're looking at anything between because it's if you like it protects the existing surface, that it's a bit too early for more expensive intervention. So and usually I would say it's between 5 to 8 years. That's kind of a period of time we thinking and looking that we would extend. But again, it's more like extending a useful life of an asset, because obviously we're not really repairing any structural layers. We're just protecting from water ingress, for any utility joints and things like that. And in terms for vehicle movement, usually, I'm not sure. I agree with you. You would think that's how usually vehicles are going, but when you look at most of the roads, obviously, cul-de-sacs and those areas, they are a bit different. But the main roads with micros, like even myself, I keep seeing various pictures from last year, and surprisingly, I'm not even sure myself, but it seems like the surfaces, it's fine. It just gets bedded in by being trafficked by vehicles and cars. And
I believe there's one road in Wokingham where you can see both microplane and inlay and lock chip all in about 300 yards. It's quite interesting to do the comparison.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Well, I shall watch my local roads with interest and see how it pans out. And I've just got one other question. It was another acronym that you mentioned in the presentation and is also in the notes. SCRIM. What does SCRIM stand for?
It's like skid resistance of road. So it's like, if you like, when you start braking, how far, if like skid resistance values are as they should be, basically your braking distance will be shorter, and then obviously you have a trigger points and areas. So when you know that SCRIM needs to be reviewed. So that's why sometimes when you arrive at roundabout or any junction, or sometimes zebra crossings, you have like, might be brownish, might be green color, might be reddish surface, like that's like additional a high friction surface, and that shortens your braking distance basically. So that's what it means.
It's a surface that gives more traction.
It is, I don't know, it's not really traction. It's like, enabling you to come to standstill if you are in a car quicker, if you like, if it makes sense.
Yeah.
It's friction, Shirley.
Friction, not traction. Like, thank you.
Friction, yeah.
Well, it was one or the other.
Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Okay, Graham, unless you've got anything else, Shirley?
No, that's fine. Take a chair.
Okay. Graham?
Thank you, Chair. My question is about planning, and excuse me, but I don't have the knowledge that some of the previous speakers have had. I'm a complete novice, but logically, there's a constant in the number of roads that we've got. We've got some predictability on the life of the surfaces. Actually, traffic is fairly predictable year on year, and the weather does have some variance. It appears to residents that we're reactive in our planning. We look at what's happened in the past year and allocate a budget and then fix it. How predictable can we be in planning the maintenance of our biggest borough asset?
So basically, what we do, and again, it's requirement by DFT as well, and obviously it links to funding. We tend to look at, obviously everything is provisional until it becomes a final, but like 3 years programs, and obviously every year you get the new condition data, and that condition data would change if you like. Any schemes in like 2 years in advance. So data is being collected, programs are being prepared, obviously a network is being maintained, and obviously we do get sometimes might be severe winter, because again it's we all can guess that looking at that road that it should last a winter, but again, winter might be rainy or even before the cold kicks in, and it's unfortunately I doubt that it's that straightforward to predict how the asset would behave under certain conditions. So sometimes, even last year, we had to, I think we had three biggest schemes and we had to intervene and undertake reactive maintenance. And again, I would say it just depends, if that's what resident sees, obviously it looks reactive, but it is reactive. So I think it's better to go, if you like, scheme by scheme basis sometimes and have a look what's been happening. Like, I can give you example, Basingstoke Road, we had to intervene and it couldn't wait until the summer because of winter impact and conditions.
And when I first started this job, I started on the basis that I would like to get to the point where a road is going to last 10 years, and you program in the maintenance of it in 10 years' time. And I was quickly persuaded out of it by the highways officers saying, we couldn't actually possibly afford to do that. We doubled the amount of money spent on roads, and we're still trying to catch up with what we'd really like to do. So it would be a nice idea to actually program stuff so that you could do it so long in advance and understand what's coming, but I'm not sure it's feasible. We have to do it on priority at the moment anyway.
So just I would add to that, Pauline, that we, as Iris says, we have a 3-year rolling programme.
Yeah.
So we are planning ahead. We don't release the 2 years in advance because they're subject to change, and all we end up with is releasing a programme of works and then it changing because of road condition changes, and then people think, you know, I was going to get my road done and now I'm not, which is not.
But I think what Graham was saying is everything's got a life, therefore you should be able to plan the maintenance at the end of that life.
And
I'd
I
like
was
to
about
get
to
there,
go
but I
on
don't
to
feel like we're there yet.
Part of the capital investment that you've made in our road network in increasing it is part of something called the Wokingham Highways Investment Strategy.
Yep.
And that is looking at a long-term raising of the overall condition of the Wokingham Highway network. And that is a long-term plan because, you know, a new road has a life expectancy, providing you do some of the stuff that we talked about in terms of interim interventions, a life expectancy of in 20 and 30 years. And that's the kind of sort of life cycle you're talking about with road network. So I think just to reassure you, Graham, we are looking further ahead than just those 3 years. But in terms of what roads we actually maintain in any 1 year, that is based on annual survey data, because we have to make sure that we hit those ones that are going to cause us the most problem.
Yes, thank you for that. And, you know, it is, I had guessed that there was a plan. There had to be, especially with the people that we got involved. But it's not obvious to me, and it's good to know, at least from a member's point of view, what the programs are that are in place. So I'm done. Thank you.
We are actually publishing the plans on the internet far further forward than used to be the case as well. If you have a look on the highways pages, those plans are there.
Okay, thank you.
As always, as the chair, my questions always get asked. So does anyone else have anything further to ask on this, or is there anything? Oh, Shirley, I can see your hand just popped up.
Yeah, could I ask something that's not specifically related to this, but it was touched on in the presentation or in the preamble by Andy about potholes, and I've read a lot about other councils who are using recycled some scheme involving recycled plastics going into potholes, and I wondered if that was something that the Wokingham might be trying out in certain areas, or you know, if is there anything? Is it good? Basically, is it something we could do?
I think that pothole fixing, there's a lot of innovation around pothole fixing. I think the government has just announced a scheme to look at innovation in pothole fixing. I don't think we've used the recycled plastic yet. We've been using a slightly older innovation, which is called a jet patch. You know, the conventional thing about patching a pothole is you take a big saw a hole, square hole, and then fill it with tarmac. But actually, there's some modern machines that effectively you don't need to cut the shape out. You just fill with sort of blow-in tarmac that seals the surface. So we had look at some innovation in that sense. We also have, wider than that, we actually have an innovation group in our highways team, and we're looking at innovations across the sort of piece in terms of highway infrastructure. And you might have seen Pauline carrying around a very, very heavy curbstone the other day in the press. That honestly wasn't made of plastic.
Yeah. Oh well, thank you. No, it's just interesting because I figured with you know, the climate emergency, we could kill two birds with one stone, rid ourselves of a lot of plastic and fill the potholes.
Absolutely, and you know, we have a monthly group looking at this kind of stuff, see what innovations are out there, and you know, we tend to do trials rather than roll it all out, because you know, it's that thing about you're talking about long time scales with highways, and that's not always obvious whether it's good. product until you get through the
And
life cycle.
Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, but the micro asphalt is more environmentally friendly because it's cold lay, isn't it?
It's colder laid, and it's a less environmentally unfriendly and energy intensive material than normal inlay.
Oh, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. Okay, is there anything else? Anyone for anyone else? Okay, so personally, I thought this was a very interesting topic. It certainly taught me more than I previously knew about the process of basically laying and deciding on what roads were done. I particularly liked the idea of the fact that we've basically got the scanners going around. Now, one question I've quickly got is in regards to the scanners. Effectively, I presume that we place an order with a contractor to basically drive around the roads at set periods of the year. Is my assumption correct there?
Yeah. So the issue, the areas we want scanner to go on to, like Bracknell, that's like I said, we're managing on behalf of Berkshire Consortium, if you like, and yeah, we tell them these are areas we want you to go and scan for us.
Okay, that's good.
And we do, if obviously we have the lengths and everything available if needed as a data backup.
I would just add to that Iris has been quite modest, because one of the improvements he brought in as part of his approach to asset management when he joined us was we changed over from doing a survey every other year of our roads to annual surveys. And that was aimed at improving the data we are using when we're actually planning that maintenance. So yeah. Thank you, Iris.
That's good to hear. And when when you mentioned the annual survey, when is it actually done? I'm going to make an assumption that it's done in the spring after the bad weather.
So usually the season starts, like, if you like, from 1st of April and it runs up to like 1st of October. For example, last year on our network, all the surveys have been were finished end of July. Obviously, this year we haven't received anything yet, so I wouldn't know. But I'm assuming similar timescales should be applicable, and we haven't received any early warnings or things like that to advise us otherwise.
Okay, and I assume the elephant in the room as to why it's later than this year is the reason why we're all doing this virtually.
Yeah, quite possible. Quite possible. Yes.
Okay. Well, that's it from me. So the recommendation is effectively that we're noting the how we're basically managing on this report. I think it's certainly very interesting. I would quite like the presentation to go out to members, unless I missed it, just so that people, to all members of the council as well as the committee, just so they have visibility about basically what we're trying to do and within the council on this, because I think it makes things a heck of a lot more clearer, rather than this road's bad. There's actually some science behind it, and it is a national set of science. So could that be done, please?
Yep.
Okay.
And can I just thank both Iris and Andy for their hard work and the presentation, and also to point out that they seem to have been working rather a long time today, and it's about time they packed in for the night.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
Thank you, Pauline.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Andy. Thank you, Pauline. We'll see you all later.
Thanks, Iris.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, I believe now we're moving on to item 26, which is basically looking at the virtual meeting review. Who is taking this, as it were?
Chairman, I'll be taking this item.
Over to you then, Anne.
Right. Just a quick run through the report. As you'll be aware, many changes have taken place, as you can see tonight, in relation to how formal meetings of the council have been conducted as a result of COVID-19, which meant that physical meetings were no longer able to take place. The purpose of the report in front of you tonight is to highlight the progress that has been made to date and set out the next steps that are being considered for running formal meetings. I would be really grateful to hear from the committee on any improvements that members feel could be made to virtual meetings, and also on the work that we're undertaking to set up hybrid meetings. As you'll be aware, previously the rules around formal meetings of the council stated that members had to be physically present at a meeting. Regulations came into force on the 4th of April that allowed formal meetings of the council to be held virtually. We were unsure exactly what rules would be included in these regulations, so before it came into force, we had started to look at the most appropriate way for the council's decision-making process to continue. As you will see from the report, the options we considered were delegate decisions to the chief executive or appropriate officers. However, this was felt that this would take decision-making away from members and there would be no public involvement. Some councils have gone down this route. We could have run a schedule of meetings virtually, but with each committee having a reduced membership and a reduced agenda, the idea of this was to make meetings more manageable. As we got used to virtual meetings, we then looked at running the full schedule meetings as previously agreed by council. And the report sets out the pros and cons of each of these options and some of the difficulties we faced. As you will be aware, we are, as far as possible, currently running a full schedule of formal meetings. At the same time as looking at those options, officers from IT, organisational development and democratic services were working together to come up with a solution to actually run virtual meetings. Many options were considered and other councils were contacted to see what platforms they were using. For the reasons stated in the report, Microsoft Teams was chosen as the preferred option. Over a period of 2 weeks, all councillors were contacted and assisted with getting Teams up and running on their devices, which when you consider how many different types of devices people have, that was a real challenge. And it was very good that they managed to do all of that. One of the other benefits of Teams is that members and public participants are able to dial into meetings using a telephone. This has been used numerous times when internet connections have become unavailable or unreliable. As we've been using Teams, a number of changes have been incorporated by Microsoft, which I'm sure you've all found very useful, including the hands up feature and the fact that now instead of just 4 people on a screen, they've extended the number of participants to 9. Once we decided on what we were going to use to use for the meetings, we then had to find a solution to stream the meetings live for the public to view. We did consider using Teams Live, which is used by a number of councils, but having used it, we felt it was more suited to training events and presentations rather than the holding of a meeting and allowing natural interaction between participants. We then looked at OBS, which is the open broadcasting software, which captures the Teams call and live streams it directly onto WBC's YouTube page. Despite the issues with using OBS, which again are set out in the report, we decided to use this solution and have found it to be really reliable and consistent. And it's actually all thanks to Callum, because it was Callum who came up to this with this solution. So we're really grateful to Callum for all his work on this. The achievements and benefits today are set out in the report, the main one being that we have continued to run the full range of formal committee meetings and members of the public have been able to participate in and view these meetings. Moving forward, we're now looking at how, once it's safe to do so, we can hold hybrid meetings. This would involve some members being physically present in Shoot End and others on a virtual Teams meeting. One of the major challenges, apart from the restrictions that we face, is how we incorporate, record and broadcast both the physical and virtual parts of a meeting. And we're currently working with the council's existing audiovisual supplier to see what upgrades can be made to the current system in the council chamber to achieve this. As I've mentioned, there are also other issues we'd need to be resolved to comply with government guidance, and again, these are set out in the report. Chairman, with your indulgence, I would just like to say that setting up virtual meetings has been a real team effort. And I'd like to thank the officers in IT, organisational development and my colleagues in Democratic Services for all their hard work and commitment to making virtual meetings work. I would appreciate comments from the committee and also any questions. Happy to answer any questions people might have. And if I can't answer them, I'm sure Callum will chip in.
I completely agree with you there, Anne. The speed and effort to get everything done was second to none. And coming from seeing this firsthand in the profession and company that I work for, it was easily one of the better ones I've done. So it's a credit to the full team. Why am I not surprised? I think other than Callum, I'm probably the only one who knows what OBS is, and one of the few that have used it personally myself several times. But yeah, I will save my questions to last because I can go into quite some depth on this. So if members have questions, please use the hand feature now. I can already see Clive's got his hand up, so he'll be going first. But if anyone else, please put your hand up now. Over to you, Clive.
Thank you very much, Guy. So first thing I want to say, Anne, is thank you very much. I think you've all done a really good job in introducing these virtual meetings. There were a few months where it seemed like nothing was going to be happening for a while, April, and then I think we got the first meeting away sometime towards the end of May. And it's been really good. There hasn't been any looking back. There's lots of benefits to be able to have a virtual meeting because you can. I think I've seen some people doing it. They can maybe not have their full evening meal whilst they're watching and taking part in a meeting, but they can have something more than a sweet or a chocolate bar or something like that, and it's a bit easier to go away and use the normal facilities because you can just turn up the volume and you can still hear what is going on. But where we go next, I don't know. I do have some reservations about having a hybrid system. It would be nice to be able to have a number of councillors in the chamber. I don't know how many we could get in there. I'm sure that's something that you are looking at. But I think we do have quite a few people who probably are still shielding because of health conditions or their age, or maybe even both. So those councillors probably wouldn't be able to attend in the chamber, and we would have to find some way of the member in the chamber still being able to see what all of the other councillors were doing. So I don't know if if you would put up a great big screen so you can see what's going on, or what. I'm not technical at all, so whereas Callum and Guy might understand how these things work, I don't have a clue. I have watched a bit of Parliament where they tried this hybrid system, and I wasn't particularly impressed with it. I think that we will need to try to take as many councillors as possible with us if we decide that we're going to have a hybrid system. But if we don't, and we just carry on with the virtual meetings, I think we've got to try and help whoever is chairing the meeting a little bit more. I don't mean the scrutiny meetings, because I think generally they seem to go very well. This one certainly does, certainly goes very well. But sometimes we don't seem to be completely on top of, say, a council meeting. And that might be because difficult questions are being asked, difficult points of order are being made, and that probably is never going to stop. But I don't know if there is anything that can be done now. I don't know if you've had any thoughts about that. I think that's probably about it for now. Thanks, Guy.
Are you happy for me to respond, Chair?
Go for it.
Yeah.
And I take the compliment fully, Clive. Thank you.
Just to say that our first meeting was actually the 22nd of April, and that was the executive. Yeah, I know we've come a long way since that first meeting. I understand the reservations for members being in the council chamber, and there is definitely no way that we would be insisting that members needed to come into the council chamber, and we will only start hybrid meetings if it is safe to do so. So we will do a risk assessment of every aspect, because it isn't just the councillors. If we've got members of the public involved as well, that's another dynamic that we would have to consider. So there is a lot that we need to get sorted before we can go forward with hybrid meetings. It's not just the technology, although that is a big part of it. The idea with the technology is that the screens in the council chamber would show the meeting, so it would integrate those who are on Teams with those who are in the council chamber. So that's what we're working with the audiovisual supplier on. I think I note your comments about council. The difficulty with council is it's a very intensive meeting, it's a very structured meeting, and you have 54 members. And it's the most difficult meeting of all. And to have that many members as well, and the complexity of it, I completely understand what you're saying, but it is much harder for the mayor to chair the council meeting. We have been making you may not think so, but we have been making improvements each time we hold council. So every time we've learnt from the previous one, and we have to try to make changes.
I completely understand that it isn't easy, and my remarks are not really intended to be critical.
Oh no, I understand that.
What can we do to make it a little bit better?
Yes, and if you have any ideas, anybody, please say. I think with the difficulty with council is you never know what's coming, because you've got points of order all over the place. You've got amendments to motions. It's all very complicated, and you can go through with the mayor to such an extent what might happen, but you can guarantee we're going to have something left field that we didn't know about, or something that happens on the night. So yes, I do take your point, and if anybody has any ideas, we're more than happy to hear them. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm just going literally in the time I saw everyone's hand go up. So it's Paul next, then Abdul and Shirley.
Thank you, Guy. First of all, a big thank you to officers for all their hard work in setting up these virtual meetings. I think it is a mammoth task and done very, very well, particularly with all the training in such a short period of time. Overall, I think the virtual meetings have worked really well. There's been the odd hiccup with technology, and occasionally somebody's pressed the wrong button and there's been total silence, or they've gone off the scanner. But the benefits have actually are really large and quite significant, and they're set out in paragraph 6 on page 28. You could also add to that about saving on heating and lighting at shoot end offices, which goes with our climate change. It meets that as well. And heating a building, in the evening till 10:30 at night is quite a lot of energy being used. There's also a significant benefit for residents being able to access the meetings from wherever they are. They could be at home, they could be on holiday, they could be working from their office still, and they don't need to rush back to actually attend a meeting at shoot end. And I think it's pointed out in the report as well, there's more and more people started to tune in and listen to these meetings, which is also helpful. With the hybrid meetings, I think they'll be very difficult to manage. Where are the members going to sit? They're going to be fairly spaced out, and which particular members can attend and which ones can't, which Clive's already picked up on. And also the public asking the questions, where are they going to be sat? And then we're going to be jumping from the council chamber to people based at home on the internet equipment and making sure that they pop up at the right time on the Teams, and again with residents as well. So I think that's going to be quite difficult to manage. The additional cleansing of the council chamber is going to be significant. It's going to be all the chairs, not just the tables and the buttons, it's absolutely everything. And then you're going to be heating all the building again with all the lighting. There's more travel for members and residents to actually go to the shoot end, which then goes against our climate change agenda. So I think hybrid meetings are not really the right way to go at the present time. I'd prefer to keep them virtual until such time as the coronavirus has got away and it's safe to go back for everybody. Thanks very much.
Thank you for those points. And yes, I mean, we've been asked to look into this because there is an appetite for hybrid meetings to take place if they can. But as I've said previously, we will not be going anywhere near them until it's safe to do so and we have got everything covered. So yes, I take on board your about the heating as well. And also I agree with you, the benefits for members of the public not having to come into shoot end to take part in the meeting and ask their question. And also we've found a lot of people have been watching online. So I think if we take one thing away from all this, we will be looking, once we go back to physical meetings, to trying to webcast more of our meetings live. Because although we used to put them up on YouTube, that was always after the event, so people couldn't actually watch them live. And I think that's something that we think is a real benefit of the virtual meetings, apart from other things, but that is a really good benefit.
Thank you, Anne.
Thanks, Paul. Abdul?
Hi, thank you, Chairman. Good evening, Anne.
Good evening.
Hi. As you know, our responsibility is to provide facility for our resident. On page 28, paragraph 7, you mentioned about maximum safe capacity. So how many people can we get in, including public, self-officers and members? That's one question. And second is, I sit in a planning committee and well as license and appeal committee. Particularly these two committees, I do feel strongly that we get into hybrid meeting due to the necessity of the public's present, and I can see their aspiration. They wanted to sort of see front of us what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At the moment, the capacity in the council chamber is 20 people. That is based on the 2 metre rule. So, of course, if the 2 metre rule goes down, there will be more capacity, but that's the capacity at the moment in the council chamber.
What's the normal capacity off the top of your head?
Pardon?
What's the normal capacity? Because I can't think of it off the top of my head.
I think it's 70. I think it's 70.
But we can use David Hicks' room, can't we, Anne?
Yes, we can. That would be less people. We haven't actually worked out. We think that would be too difficult at this moment in time to hold a hybrid meeting in David Hicks. We think we would have to hold all of them in the council chamber to start with. So that's what we've been looking at, because also we haven't got the system in David Hicks for joining the Teams meeting and the live people have been in David Hicks. So at the moment, that's not an option. So we have been looking only at the council chamber at this moment in time. But if that would work, and if the restrictions, the 2 metre restriction is changed to 1 metre at some point, then we may think about using David Hicks instead, or as well.
Thank you, Anne.
Okay, thank you, Anne. Shirley, and then I believe Graham indicated he wants to speak as well.
Thank you, Chair. I quite like these meetings, I have to say, because it means you don't have to jump in the car and drive to Wokingham. But I can see that, meetings in the council chamber, have their merits and somehow feel like that's the proper way to go. A couple of things I'd say is that presumably the full cleansing of the council chamber wouldn't need to take place if there was a period of quarantine. So if you were only using it for council meetings, which are only, say, monthly, presumably as long as the room was closed up afterwards or aired afterwards, you probably wouldn't have to have the cleaning issues. So that's one thing. Second thing is, it's great that people are watching the meetings on the YouTube channel, and I think it's really important that people have a sense of what the council gets up to and so on and so forth. One of the things that probably would need, if we're going forward with more virtual meetings, is that there may well have to be a sort of an upgrading of people's cameras to some extent. I mean, on here, most of us seem to have quite good cameras, but I've looked in on a few meetings where some people you can only see from the nose upwards, and some people it's so dark you can barely see them at all. And I think you're going to need to have a kind of a bit of consistency across the whole thing going forward if we want to encourage more people to watch. And I think it would make us look more professional. And the same also goes, I think, for some people have obviously got not quite such good internet connections, haven't got the bandwidth, and we noticed a little bit of it earlier where voices go funny and start breaking up, and that happened to a virus in his presentation, and that does happen from time to time. And there have been a few instances in council where we've lost the mayor completely, and obviously that's not a good look. So they're just observations really, Anne, to take away from this meeting.
Thank you very much, Shirley. With regard to the full cleansing, other people do use the council chamber for other things, so they would want to have a full cleansing after every meeting so that they knew it was safe if anybody else did go in there to use it. I agree about the cameras, and maybe it's for us to do a bit more training around just reminding members, because a lot of it is people have just not got the angle right of their camera. And also we might sort of mention again about the lighting, because we've brought that up before when we've sent through the protocols for virtual meetings. So maybe one of the things is we remind people. I'm not sure what we can do about people's internet connection, apart from the fact that they can dial in if they lose it. But I agree, it's not good when people do lose it. But unfortunately, we can't do anything about that. And when the mayor unplugs himself by mistake, again, all we can do is get him up and running as soon as possible.
Yeah. Thank you, Anne, and well done, and well done to the team as well for a great job. Thank you.
Yeah, and then there's the added complication that it's if the football's on, for example, the bandwidth is getting absolutely hammered in the area via streaming and things like that. So there are aspects that are definitely out of our control. Graham, you messaged in the chat that you wanted to speak, and then we'll go to Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I wonder if the previous comments have derived the expression "a mayor of a problem," but perhaps that's a different thing. But I agree with everything that's gone on, said before about cost and saving the environment. I've in my business life, I'm using this mechanism all the time, and it's not new. 20 odd years ago, I started using webcams with Skype. I was doing a lot of business in America, and it saved me 6 trips to California each year. And even if we scale that down to the 6 miles to shoot end, that's an enormous saving for the planet and cost and lots of other things. So, but the whole of this COVID thing has driven an acceptance of online. So behaviors are changing. And COVID, I was talking to a company last week. They were saying that the drive of online has been driven by COVID, advanced by 5 to 10 years in its adoption and use. So it ain't going to go back. And I think that also it's very democratic. You know, there's no limit to people coming and observing our meetings and so on and so forth. So I don't think there's any debate about whether we should do hybrid or not. It's going to happen. And, you know, if people choose to turn up in the chamber, then that may be. But that also depends on vaccines and a lot of imponderables that we don't know about at the moment. So we have to manage it, whatever happens. The 2 other points that I'd just sort of like to lightly raise is, you know, in the council meetings in particular, it just seems that not everybody is observing the protocols, and that makes it look haphazard. I don't know what happens about that. I don't know whether we should be referring to constitutional changes to make sure that people behave properly, because it doesn't look right to the general public. And the last but not least point that I wanted to bring up is there's a point in the report, actually, which said that a lot of non-decision-making committees stop meeting. Maybe they should stop meeting permanently. You know, we have to reassess, I think, out of this, what values some of the meetings and committees actually had. Perhaps that's not for this forum, but I just wanted to note the point.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much for those comments. The council meetings, yes, we can remind members of the protocols and how to behave. But yeah, thank you for your comments, and we take those on board.
Thank you, Graham. Oliver.
Thank you. Mine actually probably follows on from Graham's in as much as it seems to me to keep these meetings more effective, voting could be simplified. I mean, if we know how many people are there to vote, and if they all vote in favour, why do we then go on to do abstentions and against? It's just a total waste of time. And the other thing is, I know for the full council meetings, whether it's actually the mayor or somebody else, but somebody has control of the mutes and the videos. On this kind of meeting today, Guy, do you have control of the video as well as the unmute? Because, you know, people seem to love showing themselves unnecessarily when they're not speaking at all. And it just takes up bandwidth and everything else, reduces the quality.
No, in terms of the broadcast on that one, it is down to it is down to Callum on this. But as you can see from my own video, which has just popped back up, I do have control over what I put on as the background, as I appear to have gone into space. But that's basically the power of what you can be using with these pieces of technology. In terms of the broadcast, Callum is broadcasting right now with OBS, which the simplest way of describing that, and I'm sure Callum will correct me, is that effectively what he's doing is he's taking what he can see literally on his screen in front of him right now, and then basically a capture card on his laptop is transcribing it to a format that can be immediately uploaded to YouTube in this case. Is there any way of describing it simpler than that, Callum?
No, that's pretty good, Guy. Yeah, I think Oliver, you also touched on. I think one of your points was about muting and sort of being able to turn off anybody's video. Was that what you were?
Yes, exactly. So, yes, that was my point, Callum.
So there isn't the functionality within Teams to turn another user's video off. We can mute people, and we frequently do so at council meetings, whether it's a member of the public who's forgotten to turn the microphone off, or a member for that matter. The only way we can stop a video showing is by actually booting the member or member of public out of the meeting, so they have to rejoin. So, for example, if a member of the public were to do something on a camera that you didn't want to see, we'd boot them out of the meeting, and then they'd rejoin a lobby, so they wouldn't be able to get back into the meeting unless we admitted them in. But in terms of turning a member's camera off, we don't have that functionality as things stand.
Okay, so it's down to the chair, if amongst all the other roles that the chair has, to if he sees that somebody's camera is on and they're not talking and haven't talked for a while, to ask them to turn it off.
Yeah, that's correct. And Democratic Services, we're usually always in the background checking microphones. So if you find you do get muted in a meeting, it's not because we're trying to shut you up. It's just because we're trying to reduce the background noise.
Yeah, fine. Okay, thanks.
We do tend to put something on chat if somebody has got their camera on for a long time. We will put something in the chat and ask them to turn their camera off. Hopefully, if they look at the chat, they will take note, but we can't guarantee they'll look at it.
I suspect the same people who leave their cameras on and leave their speakers on are the same people who don't know about chat or don't follow it.
Hey, Shirley, I see your hands up again.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just another thought about it's almost the reverse of what Oliver was just saying there, is that sometimes people speak without putting their video on, and it occurs to me that this could be make it difficult for deaf people who lip read, who happen to be maybe watching the video, which then made me think, have we done an equalities impact statement assessment of virtual meetings?
That's a very good point, Shirley.
Do you want to jump in, Anne?
Oh yes, carry on. Yep.
I was going to ask if you want to jump in, but.
Oh right, yeah. Yes, we did do an equality impact assessment, and it went. I believe it was attached to the virtual meeting protocol that went to council. It was attached to that. Right. The other thing is, we've now found out. I know you may ask this question before, but people watching on YouTube can actually put captions on.
Right.
So whereas before we had to put the captions on in order for it to be a webcast, they can put it on themselves now. So there's a button on the YouTube channel that people can put on. So people who are hard of hearing can put the captions on.
Oh, that's really useful. So we ought to let people know about that. I think that's a really useful facility, because in the past you'd have had to have added subtitles, which would have added a whole new layer to the thing. So that's really useful.
Yeah. Artificial intelligence on closed captioning has come a very long way in the last 5-10 years. It's still not perfect. It's the two Scotsmans in a lift and voice controlled sort of aspects will pick up the odd wrong word and give you a very, very interesting word in the closed captions instead.
Right, thank you.
Okay. Does anyone have anything else before I ask some questions? Oliver, is your hand stuck up? Okay. Thank you. Okay. I'm glad to say that quite a few of my questions have been asked. The first one I've got is for Anne in regards to the government guidance on virtual meetings, because I know this was meant to be a temporary solution, but with coronavirus potentially becoming the 21st century's flu and the 18th and how the flu became the 20th century's plague and things like that. When does the guidance currently expire?
The guidance currently expires May 2021 unless the government give an earlier date.
Right. So
that's where it is at the moment.
Okay. Right. Because one thing I would say is working in the industry and having been doing these sorts of meetings for many, many, many years now. The one aspect that I will say is that the virtual aspect of the meetings probably makes it more open and accessible to members of the public, but also to individuals who want to potentially become councillors. Because as someone who has a young family and works for a living, my time is stretched at times. So this aspect has actually been really, really useful for me, because I can literally eat dinner and help put my daughter to bed and then come down and do a meeting. So that aspect is really good. But if we are going to be I do like the idea of hybrid meetings going forward into the future, hopefully in a post-COVID world, but also what is referred to as the new normal in parts of the industry, is basically allowing people who have got, let's say, they can't get back from the office due to there's been a lightning strike and hitting the signals equipment somewhere down the Waterloo line, and they can't physically get into the Chute End. This gives us an option to basically get people increase attendance in meetings using the hybrid option. So I presume that currently working with the supplier, effectively you're taking an approach like what was done in Parliament, in that effectively you'll have the screens and it would be up to the chair and an officer to basically alert people that there is going to be a question coming in on the screen, as it were.
Yes, we believe that's exactly how it would work. We have got a demonstration next week that Callum, myself and Neil are going to see how it would work and how it would fit with the way that we set up meetings now.
It'd be useful to know how that goes as well. That's been asked. In regards to the voting, so I know that's been raised a couple of times. Is there any capacity in Teams or in another piece of software for basically a virtual vote, as it were, as in a tick, a cross, and a circle function? So basically, tick approve, cross disapprove, circle abstain.
I don't believe there is in Teams. Okay. The only thing is the hands up, but I don't know whether we could integrate something else with Teams. I'm not sure whether that's possible.
I honestly don't know. Thankfully, this isn't my area. I'm more the VPN side of things, so I don't have a clue about how the collaboration stuff works. Thankfully, so I honestly don't know. It was just a general question on that regard. With a capacity of 20 people in the council chamber at the moment, my gut feeling is that almost right now precludes a full council meeting, because once you take into account all the officers, all the members and everything, you're going to have 75% of the full council still in virtual aspect. Now, the committees Now that makes things a little more interesting because effectively you could get a more 60-30 split in regards to a committee meeting potentially. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Anne, at the moment? I know you've got to do risk assessments, etc. I'm just thinking out loud and trying to give ideas and suggestions, etc.
Given the complexity of the council meeting and how difficult it is to manage even virtually, we are not contemplating holding full council in that way. If we did, it would hold a meeting, it would be more exec, planning and scrutiny would be the ones that we would consider. Council would be far too difficult to set up in that way.
And collectively, this committee, I think, breathes a sigh of relief at that. Because, yeah, that's a nightmare scenario on that one. There was something else, but it's been such a long week, I've now completely forgotten some of the things. Oh, yes. I presume that with what we're doing, if this becomes a much more permanent, if government permits it, because the government, once the guidance expires, we have to look at basically, do we continue this with virtual aspect, with hybrid aspect, doing virtual meetings if the weather is particularly bad, for example. A snow day springs to mind. Do we have the powers constitutionally to basically provision this? I know it would need to go through constitutional working group, etc. But is there actually power within local government legislation to do this?
No, the legislation is very specific that for members to be counted as being in a meeting, they have to be physically in the meeting together. Right. Virtual meetings are not allowed, were not previously allowed at all, and it's only under this regulations that we're allowed to do so. So if they revert back to the Local Government Act, we won't be able to hold any virtual meetings.
Okay, I'm now going to throw this back to the to members of the committee, Anne. What does everyone think of that? Is this something that we want to try and keep going forward, this potential virtual aspect, once things get back to normal? Because that means we're going to have to basically write a letter to the government and ask. Clive?
Yes. Simple answer. Yes. I think we do want to keep it. So if Democratic Services can put together a letter, send it to the government and say, yes, when you do decide what we're going to be doing from May onwards, we want to have some sort of virtual facility in it.
Thanks, Clive. Shirley?
Yeah, I would exactly what Clive said. I think that being able to have these meetings remotely is brilliant, and I think picking up on what you said. I mean, I don't have a young family anymore. It's just me and the cat. But we've discussed this before. We want to encourage sort of younger people to become counsellors. But if you've got young family, trying to get to a meeting at Shoot End by 7 o'clock, if you live in a distance away, if you live in Wargrave or Twyford or somewhere like that, it's not easy. So being able to do a meeting like this is brilliant.
Paul? Thank you, Shirley.
I would agree with what Clive and Shirley's just said. I think there's huge benefits in keeping these virtual meetings. It meets our climate agenda. It's significant benefits for residents as well. And if members or residents are stuck somewhere, then at least they can come onto these meetings in a virtual basis. It's so much easier to do so. So I prefer to keep them as is. Thank you.
Okay, and just for the record, I've also Graham popped up in the chat saying he agrees as well. Oliver?
I agree as well.
I think that might be unanimous for you, unless Abdul, you wish to defer.
I agree.
Yeah, I think that sums it up for you. And so I think one thing that we need to do is write a recommendation to the executive basically asking that when normality begins to resume, that there is an amendment to the Local Government Act to allow for virtual aspect of some meetings, I would say, because the full council, I think, might be asking a step too far with current technology. But it makes sense basically in environmental grounds. It makes sense on accessibility grounds, on openness factor. Members, please just jump in and shout at anything else that I'm forgetting off the top of my head here.
Well, I think we need to say to have the option to do so.
Oh yes, that I completely agree.
And hybrid.
Yeah, because my thinking is around the hybrid model, because some people will wish to get in. If I'm stuck in London because lightning struck a signal box again, I'd like to be able to dial in and just have the conversation, as it were. So we need to basically write I think the process would be, if I am remembering this correctly, and would basically be to write a recommendation to the executive to basically have a letter written to government asking that what I suggested happens effectively. Is that the correct process? It is approaching 9 o'clock at night, and I've been on the go since 7:30.
We can look at the best way of getting the letter. I'm not sure that going to the executive, but it might be. We'll look into the best way of doing this. It is hoped that they will have some consultation, because I'm sure that councils up and down the country will want to keep some form of virtual meeting. So I think it's unlikely that they don't do some form of consultation that we could respond to as well.
Agreed. And someone like the Highland and Islands Council springs immediately to mind as who would jump at virtual meetings, because I dread to think the travels for that one. Clive, Paul, you've still got your hands up. Have you got anything to add? Oh, that's a no then. So I think that's a way forward on that regard, and I now think the members of the committee are going to lynch me, which is effectively, considering the challenges that we have had with this meeting, is if I offered myself as effectively the first one to potentially do a hybrid meeting, as I work in this industry and have managed these stuff quite regularly. Is that something that you would be happy with, as it were? And I can see things about to be thrown in my general direction for volunteering to do that.
How would that work then, Guy? So some of us would be going in to shoot end.
Yes, effectively, but it would all be very dependent on regulations, risk assessment, etc., etc. So it would be effectively, let's say it would be myself, you, Clive, Callum, and Shirley and Oliver in the chamber, and then Paul, Abdul, others effectively outside the chamber virtually, and we have to try and do it that way. I'm being honest. I think I'm probably the chairman who's most likely to be able to manage that right the first time round. And I'm not blowing my own trumpet. I'm just trying to lay it down on what I think and feel, considering I've watched so many other meetings so far this year.
You might be, but I think we are a relatively small committee.
Yeah.
And I think it might be you and Callum and Neil in the council chamber.
But the point is it's an experiment. Someone's got to go first.
Yeah. I don't know. What does anybody else think?
Well, I guess we could give it a whirl.
Graham?
Go for it. Set an example.
We will we will keep you informed of how we're getting on with it, and thank you for offering to be our guinea pigs, as it were.
I think it's more me offering to be the guinea pigs. I suspect everyone will start throwing some things at me if it goes badly wrong. But someone's got to do it, and I'd rather it be me dealing with it and knowing the technology a little better than some. I think I may have been one of the few people who didn't need to be set up on Teams properly, off the top of my head, because I use it elsewhere as well. Okay, so has anyone else got anything to add on this? Because we covered off actually most of the areas that I wanted to, and I'm pleased to hear that we want to try and keep some sort of virtual element from the committee as a whole. Paul, your hands up.
Do you see, Guy, an issue then if you are the guinea pig, but you're the only one sat in the council chamber and everybody else is sat at home? Because that might be the situation.
It might be indeed, but at the same time, though, if that's the case, that's the case. We need to test it somewhere. I know that Anne and Callum and Neil, etc., will will probably play around and do stuff internally, but we won't. Nothing is tested until we basically actually run a full proper meeting through it.
Because my other point, which I raised earlier, was going against the climate change agenda with all the heating and lighting, and that comes in with it.
I completely agree, Paul, on that. But it's an aspect of what will we be allowed to do, and if the government turns around and said yes, you can have people attending virtually, but you're meant to be in the chamber unless you have extenuating circumstances not to be. That's where I worry that they might go to.
As Anne said, I think earlier, we won't be the only authority asking for this, because I think most authorities have found it's worked very well.
I completely agree. If we can stay virtual, so be it. I'm just trying to play the field here as I see it.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
No worries. Does anyone else have anything to add? Okay, I've got one final thing. And Shirley, you're off mute. Do you have anything to add?
No.
Okay. So I've just got one final thing, and that's more to Callum. In regards to how has the support been in regards to the broadcast for the OBS system from IT, and how would that potentially be being done moving forward? Because I hope it's not just Callum who's broadcasting everything, every meeting as things stand, and that there is some sort of redundancy. So
initially it was just me when we started off. I can't remember how long that was for. We've now got 2 people from IT who are helping out as well, but it's obviously subject to their sort of working schedules, and sometimes they're doing upgrades and maintenance in the evening, which mean they can't record a meeting, for example. So it is at the moment 3 of us. Myself, I'm sort of doing the bulk of them. It's hoped in future that more democratic services people will be able to do it as well, as sort of they upgrade their internet connections and things like that, because that ultimately that's what it is. It's bound to at the moment. It's an internet thing. It's not a hardware or software thing. It's purely the connection at someone's home address to be able to actually upload at a suitable quality. So that's where the limit is at the moment.
Okay.
The difficulty we've had is a lot of the providers, you can't speak to them at the moment, the internet providers. So whereas some of us wanted to get our internet upgraded so that we could do OBS, you can't speak to anybody. So we've all been sort of caught by that, which is a shame.
Yeah. No comment from my internet provider, because I've had problems with them as well. So yes, I get it. Shirley?
On the subject of this OBS, presumably the internet at Shoot End is up to the job. could the person doing the recording, instead of being at home, be uploading the recording, but instead of being at home, be in shoot end, like on their own?
Yes, they could be, but that means they've got to open shoot end, and the building support officers have to be in the building as well.
Right, yeah. So it's a bit more complicated than just somebody nipping in and using a room. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's interesting you said that, Shirley, because we have done that for several daytime meetings where another member of Democratic Services, other than myself, has done it. So we have done that. But yeah, as Anne said, it's the issue of the building normally closes at 6 p.m. and then once everything's tidied up at 7 p.m. completely, everyone's out of the building. So it would have to be kept open just for that facility.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, I've got nothing else on this. Other than all I can say is echo what's already been said again, and thank Democratic Services and the IT team for the work they did to get us up and running, and the work that's been done. I think this is a good report. I think you've got full buy-in from this committee on basically keeping the virtual element. It's just we are at the whim of greater powers. So thank you, Anne, thank you, Neil, and thank you, Callum, for putting this together at our request.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you members for all your comments. And if anybody's got any other comments that they'd like to feed in, please let us know. Thank you very much. Good night.
No worries, thank you. Good night. Good night, Anne. Right, I'm afraid the rest of us can't quite go yet because we've still got going through the forward plan quickly. I should have yeah. Okay. So for meetings coming up in the 22nd, 13th of October and the 28th of October. Now Neil, I can see your hands up.
Evening, Guy. Just to say that, as you're aware, all 4 of the scrutiny committees have been looking at aspects of the council's response to the pandemic.
Yep.
And the aim is to try and bring it all together into a report going to scrutiny in October.
Yep.
So at the meeting on the 22nd of September, it might be an idea to just allow some time for a debate at the end to try and pull together the committee's thoughts on the various presentations it's had. And then that would help in shaping the report going forward, which brings it all together.
So kind of like what we've done this evening with the virtual meetings aspect, effectively.
Yes.
I'm completely willing to do that. Is the committee amenable to that? If you're not, speak now, forever hold your peace.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. So we'll put in a if you could just put in a line, Callum, basically before the work program, basically saying COVID review, general discussion, something like that.
Yep, that's fine. So my suggestion on the 22nd is, as you can see, if you look at that, there's a number of things in there bundled up, and the property investment portfolio is one of them, because I've asked the officers primarily to focus on changes as a result of COVID. So my suggestion is, much like any of you who have been on wellbeing board, and I think Health Overview and Scrutiny might do it as well, they commonly put times at the start of their agenda, so it gives the chairman a rough idea as to how long to spend on each item. I just feel it might be worth just putting down some times, whether it's an hour for the community safety side of things and then 30 minutes for property investment, and etc., just so that we can keep focused on the evening and make sure that we don't spend 2 hours on one thing and then all of a sudden we haven't got through any of the other things at all.
I think that might not be a bad idea for this one, because then that gives us at the end effectively an open-ended aspect to basically have the conversation. That's why I don't think that's a bad idea at all. Neil?
Thanks. Can I just say as well that the Climate Emergency Task and Finish Group is publishing its report next week, and one of its recommendations is around the council's investment portfolio. So as well as looking at the COVID-19 aspects, you might want to think about, is the council's investment portfolio consistent with its climate emergency principles?
That's a very good line of questioning there. I'd forgotten that was coming out next week. But then again, I'm going on holiday next week, so my brain's somewhere else for next week. Does anyone have any objection to those two aspects? I'm reading silence as acceptance. So moving on to the 13th of October.
Do you want me to give you a quick update on these, Guy? There's
Please,
there's only one change. This happened very recently. So where's the email? So all we're doing is the 28th of October meeting is not going to have children's services there, but instead it's going to have place and growth. And then that's just all that's doing is swapping with the 23rd of November. So you'll be receiving children's services there rather than place and growth. And it's just due to, I think, director and sort of senior staff being on leave on that date. So they want to be able to come to the committee, obviously, to be able to answer member questions in full as they did last year. So that's the only change in terms of running order for budget scrutiny. With these meetings, obviously this is going to take a fairly big chunk of time, but there is room probably for one other smaller item on each agenda. We don't have to put it on there. We don't need to be putting them on there for the sake of it, but just to bear in mind, generally on page 35 and 36, some of the items that we may not have looked at, there's potential to scatter these amongst the budget scrutiny meetings.
Okay, that's fair. That seems fair enough, Callum. If people are on holiday, people are on holiday, so it's not pushing it out. It's still within the timescale, so that's acceptable. Personally, So, members, who wants to suggest things we put in on the, let's say, the 13th and the 13th of October. No, wait. 13th. Wait, which one? 13th and the 28th of October. Is that correct, Callum, or am I going mad?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, you could keep the 13th clear and just have that as the starter.
Actually, yeah, that's a good point.
It's completely up.
It's 28. Yeah, I think you're right. 28th and 23rd of November, which
just gives the officers a bit more time then.
Yes, and as Oliver knows, I'm still potentially a question mark around those two dates because I may be off on effectively paternity leave. So does anyone have any suggestions on what we can put in on the 28th and the 23rd?
If not, members can have a think about it, and at the very end of the 22nd meeting, we can schedule some things for the 28th of October and the 23rd of November then. But I see Shirley has got
Shirley, I can see your hands up.
Yeah, in the list on page 35 and 36, item number 9. It says scrutinising service and policy developments relating to council's public-facing services, etc. I don't know whether this is the right place for that. We did talk at one point about looking at the council's public-facing website, the thing where the public can report things and that kind of things. But I don't know whether that would be too big to slot in, and I don't know whether that falls under this heading in number 9 or whether that means something completely different.
Neil, and then I'll go to Clive after that.
Yeah, I believe at the last management committee meeting, they decided they wanted to have a look at the website, so it's already been bagged, as they say.
Oh, right. Oh, that's good. Happy to let them have it instead.
Was that the one last Wednesday? Neil?
No, that was the call, and it was the one in July.
Okay. Everything blurred. Oh, yeah, now I remember. That was the one where I was rushing down south at high speed. Clive?
Would it be possible to put items 14 and 15 on for 28th of October and the 23rd of November?
Let me just have a look at those for you, Clive. So that's scrutinising the council's housing service.
Yep.
And that is Scrutinising the operation and performance of council-owned companies.
Yes, I don't think we've done that for some time.
We haven't done that with the housing side of things. You've had an update.
Yeah, because we had the stuff with the COVID-related stuff.
Because I think the idea was we encompassed that within the COVID side of things. But if you feel that you want them to come back again.
We did have the housing regarding COVID. I can't even remember when the meeting was.
Right,
August just got completely blown out of my brain.
This 14, item 14, is scrutinising the needs of local residents and community, so a bit wider than the effects of COVID-19, isn't it?
I can ask the question to officers, okay, and if they feel that it's been covered or it's too narrow, they can always, rather than come to committee, they can always provide a briefing sheet to members, and then if you're not satisfied, we can always ask them to come along to another meeting. I think that's probably the way to do it.
Yeah.
With regards to 15, as far as I'm aware, we haven't done that for some time, unless you can remember, Guy, the council-owned companies.
I think the last time it must have been pre-budget work last year at the latest. It may have even been earlier than that.
So I can.
It's been a long while.
I can definitely ask. I can send some emails out and see if we can get.
I think on some of the shared service agreements, there's definitely a need to look into it further. Simply because, for example, who was responsible for those absolutely stupid fees that came out recently? Is it PPE? No, that's equipment. I hate acronyms. PPP. I hate acronyms. When I come to power, I'm banning them. Yes, the PPP and things like that. So I think that is an aspect we do need to look at, especially around the shared services aspect as well, because it's an aspect of considering what I fear will be the budget this year. I think we need to look and make sure we're getting value both from the companies and our shared services agreement, because if we're not,
absolutely,
it's possible that might be too much for one meet. I'm just thinking shared service, and so we could split it up to council-owned companies and then a couple of the shared service agreements as two separate items. I would suggest.
I'm open to that.
Yeah. Okay.
Shirley, I can see your hands back up as well.
Oh, sorry, Chair. I've forgotten to put it down.
No worries. So I'm content with that effectively for the next couple of meetings, because we got time to set more as things come on. I do realise there's one aspect I should have spoken to Anne beforehand, before she disappeared, was basically for setting the diary for next year and setting these meetings more in stone as opposed to having everything extraordinary. But I'll write Anne a note and request that in the calendar as well, because it just makes things a little more formal. So effectively, we'll put in on the 28th. We'll ask for the housing aspect, if you could do that, Callum, and then and then for the 23rd, it will be shared services or the companies, depending on which one would be easier and less taxing on that particular department's time, given it's the budget season as well. Part of me thinks shared services is going to be a little more tricky than the companies, but we'll see. But we do need to cover both of them within the budget cycle, I think, as well.
With the housing, as discussed earlier, do you want me to, rather than put them in for the 28th, do you want me to go to them and get them to
yes, please,
consider it themselves, whether they think there is that much of an update? Because it might just be that they can cover it in 2 sides of A4 and send it around to members, and then we can just do it like that, rather than having them come along, just for a filler almost.
Yeah, I think that would be a more appropriate one. And if you get the update, because we're meeting again in 20 days, we can get the update from then, and if we need to add it in, we can add it in.
Exactly.
Neil, I can see your hand shot back up.
Just on housing, Guy, one of the issues that came up within the climate emergency group was fuel poverty. and how that impacts on families living in the borough. So that might be an aspect of the housing situation which you might want to look into, because that ties in with the wider climate emergency discussion.
It does indeed, and that's a very good point. So there is definitely an aspect that we can drill into on. Yeah, that's a very good idea. A good idea, Neil. An ideal Neil. Wonder what that is. That's a tongue twister. Okay. Does anyone else have any burning desire to see anything on the 22nd as things stand, or shall we look at it when we get closer to the date of December? This is.
Wait until nearer the time.
Yep, and the only other thing from me is just to remind members, I'll send an invite out, but the idea is before the 13th of October, on I think 6 PM on the 12th of October, the idea is to have just a committee member private briefing, just to sort of develop some key lines of inquiry before the public meeting on the next day on the 13th. So you'll obviously all have your agendas by then. It's just because the budget is so different this year in terms of what it has been to previous years, in terms of having to find savings, it's just going to be useful to have an hour privately just to focus minds and then crack into it the next evening publicly.
In short, everyone, you're being given homework with a next day delivery. But yeah, I think that's the correct way to do it, simply because we need to be able to sink our teeth into it and have the questions and understanding to hand. We have a duty to the council, and more importantly to the people of Woking, to make sure this is done correctly. Just be grateful it's not me marking the homework. Does anyone else have anything else, or shall we close the meeting there? No? Okay. Right. All I can say is thank you very much, everyone. Have a very good rest of your evening. I thought it was a very interesting meeting tonight, and everyone have a good weekend when we come to it.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Have a very good evening.
Thank you, guys.